Well, hello, folks. Once again, you're listening to the famed Biscuits and Gravy Show. On the other end of the Cleed & Feed link with me is my friend Jim. Turn left in 100 feet, recalculating Nelson. How are you doing, Jim?
I knew I should have taken that left turn at Albuquerque.
Yeah. You had to say that because I'm in New Mexico, right?
That's right.
That's right. Hey, we're going to have a good show today, as we always do. Jim, I got to tell you, our podcast is exploding compared to what we're used to getting. That kind of explosion. Yeah, maybe even a little bit safer of an explosion, but it's good nonetheless. We're getting a lot of downloads. I'm amazed at how popular this podcast is getting with consistent listeners too. So if you're listening and you like what you hear, go to Facebook and look for the Biscuits and Gravy Bunch. If you go to our fantastic website, you'll see a little Facebook link up at the top in the header. That'll take you to it too, ourfantasticwebsite.com. If that's too long of a website for you, you don't like to type that many letters, just try vintagebiscuits.com. That'll take you to the same place. So anyway.
I had something kind of fun happen this week.
Tell me about it, Jim.
Well, you know how you'd sent me the package of
Yes.
No, different package.
Yes.
You sent me a few packages.
Right.
You sent me the package of business cards.
Yes, I did.
Okay. So this week's shout out goes to David. And I gave David's a coworker, and I gave David a few business cards, and I'm coming up doing my job, and he's talking to like a third person and says, "Hey, did you know this guy was on the radio? You need to listen to this guy." Here, and he pulls one of our business cards out of his pocket and hands it to another person. I'm like, "God, okay, that was unbearably cool."
That's great.
I was just so this week's shout out, at least for me, goes out to Sir David of Detroit or ish. Thank you so much for your support. Love all the people that I work with and the people that I've talked to that are coming on board.
Fantastic.
And enjoying the ride. We're going to see where this is going to go on.
Oh, what a ride it is, too.
Yeah. Devon on days, you rock. I don't know if you're listening, but you rock anyways.
Awesome. So, I really don't have any shout-outs this weekend, except I'll give a shout-out to Justin. I found out who our liker was on Podbean, and it was Justin, so I'll give a shout-out to him. Keep listening, Justin. It's folks like you that makes folks like us happy. Of course, other things make us happy, too.
And I only have one thing to say to Justin.
Yeah, what's that?
Oh.
Is that a private joke?
Well, we both do martial arts.
Okay.
There's actually pictures I should send. Yeah, right. There's pictures I should send that's got me, Justin, and my instructor and friend and instructor Richard Georgie all in one pic. And Richard, right before the camera went click, Richard says, "Don't smile, don't anybody smile." And so we're like all sitting there trying to look like the old austere kung fu masters, like sitting in a chair. And Justin, I got pics with Justin with this like almost, I dare you to make me smile look on his face.
Right.
It was pretty hilarious, but
Well, while we're at it, I will tell you that Sarah is not with us tonight. She's visiting with her family in Illinois, and we tried to get them online. They're trying to use our Clean Feed platform, and they were having some technical difficulty. So we opted to kick them out of the room tonight. No, not really. We just opted. Well, yeah, I guess that's kind of what we did.
It wasn't by choice.
It wasn't. No.
The only way to get the show rolling was to get the show rolling, and we had to do what we had to do.
And we're starting a little bit later than what we usually do because we had some technical difficulties. But which brings me to I'll just do this right now, an app review. This is a PC app software. TeamViewer. Jim,
TeamViewer.
Yeah, the TeamViewer is why you are hearing us tonight.
Yes.
Because Jim was having technical difficulties. We were both trying to walk through it, and I was, try this, tell him to right-click on this, and then it just wasn't working. So we both downloaded TeamViewer. I got remote access to the computer and pretty much had the problem solved in less than 6 or 7 minutes. So yeah. That's why you're hearing us today as TeamViewer.
Now, Jason, where did you come in contact with TeamViewer?
Actually, initially I was working for a radio station in Alamogordo, New Mexico, and those of us that would program the automation software could do it from home using TeamViewer, loading new shows into the program and everything else. And we were using a different platform at the time. and it just got too complicated, and the station owner said, let's switch over to TeamViewer, and that's what we did, and it worked great.
The first time I got in contact with it was from Joe,
that guy,
Martin. He actually helped me out with a bunch of tech support in the past, and I'd give him remote control of my computer, or we'd pass files one to another.
Sure.
Because it's actually got a number of capacities on there. One is you can give somebody one-time remote control access. They got to have your password, and it'll change. It'll change from time to time. So once you give somebody access to your computer, it's not like they have access to your computer for time and eternity.
Right.
They would have to ask for permission to get access again.
Yeah.
But so that's one thing that it has on it. The other thing it has is like a file sharing thing where you can actually pass files to one another. It's got a few other things on there that are really cool. That's actually slipping my mind, but it's free for personal use if you're using it commercially, which technically we don't fit into that category because
this is personal.
We're not making any money yet.
It's very personal.
So it's to me personal. It is.
Right.
But
we're a couple of personable fellows. We are.
There you go. So, but yeah, it's a cool thing that if you have any use or need any kind of backup, you got a relative that you think might be able to fix your computer, but they're 2 counties over. This is the way.
It's the way to do it. Yep.
It is. It certainly worked, and we're sitting here doing this from New Mexico to an undisclosed location deep
in the Motown
the
area.
Right.
Anyway, I'm sorry, I can't say Motown without thinking or having some sort of music playing in the background. So anyway,
it is what it is.
There you go. Let's see a couple of other things. Hey, our executive consultant, I got to tell you about this guy, Rodney Barton. He's an awesome man. He's deep in prayer right now because he's not with us right now. He hasn't gone on to a greater plane or anything, but he was unable to be with us yesterday when we took a trip out to White Sands Missile Range. Jim, do you know anything about White Sands Missile Range?
I do not.
Well, let me give you a little bit of the Reader's Digest education on that. White Sands Missile Range is where before it was White Sands Missile Range, before they named it that, I believe, it was where they tested the first atomic bomb explosion. And it's an amazing place. They have the site there. It's called Trinity Site. It's where they dropped the first atomic bomb, or first tested the atomic bomb, back in, I believe it was 1945. Because the government knew they were going to do this, there was a lot of ranchers in that basin that they knew they would be affected by radiation. And so they pretty much evacuated these people and took their property from them. There were lease arrangements, and they were supposed to get paid so much a month when they were out. Well, the lease arrangements weren't that lucrative. You're talking about people who raised 500 and 600 head of cattle and were doing pretty well, and all of a sudden they lost that, and the lease arrangement wasn't making up that difference. So they got kicked off their property and they were continuously told over the decades, you might be able to come back in about 5 years. And they continued to pay leases and leases and leases. The leases, again, weren't that much. Back in 1970, when their lease was up for renewal, the government said, no, we're done. No more leases. We're just taking the property and you're not getting anything. I said they weren't getting anything. They gave them approximately, this is from one of the reports I heard yesterday during the trip, 5% of the market value of the property. Not the houses or anything else that these farmers and ranchers had constructed. 5% of the value of the property is what the government gave them. It was not consensual. That's a word we hear a lot these days. But so that's what they got, and the government said they said forget it. So it just that's what they got, and that was the end of it. So these ranchers they've disputed in court for years all of this, and they never really won anything. So it's a sad thing. But we went out there. One of the ranchers' families They thought for years that their property had been bombed, but it wasn't, and they made arrangements with the government to come out there and visit their ranch, just kind of look over for nostalgic sake. They're able to do this approximately once every 10 years. And the family is able to take a small group out with them by special invitation. While they're on this trip, when they're visiting the ranch, they also get to visit the McDonald Ranch. The McDonald Ranch House is where the plutonium core was assembled for the first atomic bomb. And in one particular room of that house, the rest of it was offices and different scientific research facilities. It's not a very big house at all. You can Google McDonald Ranch House, Trinity site, and you'll get some pictures of the site. I am one of the few people that has gotten the honor of eating lunch in the same room that the plutonium core was assembled. I ate lunch in that room yesterday. Even on the tours that they take twice a year, people don't get to eat there. They just get to walk through it. So what a treat. Once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. It's rather cool. But
I haven't started to glow in the dark.
I'm not glowing.
Superpowers, or
not for those reasons.
Extra sets of arms, any of that.
I glow for a lot of reasons, but that's not one of them. So,
yes, I know. I was at your wedding.
Yeah, well, yeah. So, yeah. Oh boy, you're gonna get me sidetracked, aren't you? So we got to eat there, and then after the McDonald Ranch, we went to Ground Zero, as you would call it, the Trinity site, and they have the obelisk there. And when you're there during the times of year when it's open, it's hard to get a good picture of yourself standing by it because there's crowds just huddled around it. And we were able, our small group, everybody was able to line up and get a picture of it by themselves with it, and it was pretty neat. I was gonna, Jim, I was gonna take San Antonio George and get a picture of him at the site. San Antonio George, that's our Rubber Chicken Club. I'll talk to you about that a little bit more later. If you've listened to the last podcast, you know all about it. But this event in history was something that not only cost these ranchers their livelihood, their farms, and their way of life as they knew it, but this event eventually led to the taking of thousands and thousands of lives. And it just didn't feel right.
No, I get it.
To minimize such, and I don't know what other word to say except sacred, and I don't mean that in the divine sense of the word, but it's a special piece of ground. It's a special moment. And I didn't want to do that, San Antonio George has his place, and that's not one of them. So, but it was a good trip. I learned a lot. We went back that night at 7 o'clock down at the hotel in Alamogordo with the family, and they put on a presentation of some videos where they talked to other ranchers who had had their property taken, and all of those ranchers in that video has since passed on. Their children are around, but it's a done deal. They're not ever going to get their ranches back. They're not ever going to be properly compensated for it. It's a done deal. And it's kind of sad that our government would do something like that. I understand, we were talking about this earlier, the concept of eminent domain,
right,
for the greater good of everybody else. And especially, in World War II, for the war effort, as they called it. Totally get that, totally understand. For freedom to have a ranch, to raise cattle, to raise a family on something like that, and that get taken away from you in one fell swoop. It's a sad thing, and it's a sad statement on the affairs of our government at the time, which I would say they're not much better, but that's an understatement. They're probably far worse than that now, just in different aspects. So, but Rodney was supposed to go with us, and he wasn't able to, but I know he would have loved it because you talk about a photo opportunity. There's just a lot of things to photograph there, including I took a picture of a beautiful oryx. Did you get that, Jim? I sent that to you, didn't I?
I did.
That's a beautiful animal. And an oryx is kind of related to the antelope, but these oryxes were shipped into New Mexico from Africa in the 1960s. The state of New Mexico brought them in because they thought, hey, we can bring these in and advertise a wild game hunt, and they will flourish here. And boy, did they. The population has exploded on these oryxes. They have special hunts. You can hunt them by state lottery, and various other programs from what I understand. But overall, it was a good day. A couple of other things we're going to talk about, Jim, before we get into the regular stuff on the tracker. We are on iTunes. We're on Google Play, Roku. Starting June 9th, we will be on the Leading Edge Radio Network. We'll also be on Steve Jarrett's station down in Clearwater, Florida. I believe it's Clearwater. He called me today, and that's where his number came up, on Q-Star FM. And, Jim, I can't tell you, they got a lively bunch over there that are really looking forward to hearing us.
Awesome.
Yeah. So, also, if you're hearing us, if you're on iTunes, please, please, please go over and rate and review us. We'd love that. You'd make us happy. And if you send me an email at our fantastic website at gmail.com and tell me you did that, I'll give you a shout-out on the radio, on the program. That would be great. The Rubber Chicken Club. Jim, you've got a rubber chicken this week. I sent you one.
I have a rubber chicken.
Have you named him yet?
I have named him.
Yes?
He is Kung Pao Charlie.
Kung Pao Charlie. Okay.
Kung Pao Charlie.
So we have San Antonio George and Kung Pao Charlie. So you have Kung Pao Charlie. What does Kung Pao Charlie sound like? There you go. All right. So welcome to the Rubber Chicken Club Hall of Fame, Jim. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to have these trivia contests and other contests, and if you win, we will send you a rubber chicken straight from the remote offices of the Biscuits and Gravy Show in southern New Mexico. When you get your rubber chicken... Yeah. When you get your rubber chicken, take a photograph of it with yourself. Jim will be doing that this week and sending it to me. It can be at a historical site. Use respect, like we mentioned before. And also, you could be doing something funny or silly or with the kids, with the family, whatever you want to do. Every now and then, Jim and I will judge the ones we've gotten in, and you'll win a bigger prize based on that photograph if you're selected. So that's the Rubber Chicken Club Hall of Fame. Also, we are uploading videos, I guess you'd call them videos, of the podcast on YouTube. I call it a video for lack of a better word, but it's a static picture of us with the podcast behind it. So if you, for some reason, you're not able to get us on Shoutcast or our website, you can also go to YouTube and watch us there. So anyway, shout out to Rodney Barden as well, my good friend, our executive consultant. So Jim, tell me, how's your day been?
Oh, great googly moogly. Just busier than a one-armed wallpaper hanger.
That's pretty busy, isn't it?
That's pretty busy.
Yeah, okay.
You ever seen a one-armed wallpaper hanger at work?
You know, I haven't, but I have this funny feeling that a one-armed wallpaper hanger would be pretty fast at his work compared to a no-armed wallpaper hanger.
Yeah.
Maybe we could... I don't even...
I'm not sure what to do with that.
I promised you last week, Jim, that one of these days I would tell you the college thrift store suit story. This is good. This will teach you a lesson in greed. There were these two fellas, and I don't even know who they were because I actually heard this story from my dad. It might have happened before I went to Midwestern BC. That these two fellas went down to the local thrift store to buy themselves a sport coat because, as you know, we were required to wear sport coats to classes and to chapel and just about everywhere. So they went down there and they found these two sport coats. One was real cheap, really good value, and it was a high-dollar suit. A really good brand name, something that would have cost a couple of $100, and he got it for like $25. And it was a good suit. And the other one, he bought a standard run-of-the-mill suit. It was a good quality, but not like the other one. And he paid like $25, $30 for it, something I don't remember exactly. But they went back to the college dorm and they're putting their suits on, trying it. And the one fella that bought the high dollar one, he tried it on, he liked it. And the other one that bought the cheap one, he got a little greedy. He said, let's try these, let's exchange these suits and see how they look and feel. Me wearing yours and yours wearing mine. So they did. And this guy got on he swapped the suit and he put on the high dollar suit. He said, I think this one looks a little bit better on me. It fits better. That one fits better on you. I'm just going to keep this suit. You just keep that one. And he was insistent on it. Well, the other fella, he didn't really much care for that. He didn't like that idea, but he was a real humble kind of fella and real graceful about it. And he didn't want it to ruin a friendship. So he said, okay, if that's what you want, brother, that we'll do that. We'll swap suits. And he felt a little lump on the inside pocket, the fellow with the cheap suit on now, and he reached in and he pulled out a wad of five $100 bills. And he said, praise God, God has blessed me today. And that fellow that traded the suit with him was pretty upset at himself.
Ooh.
He was wishing he hadn't been so greedy.
Well, that's what you get for and taking advantage of a friendship on top of that.
Yes, he got what was coming. Had you ever heard that story before?
No. Are these people that I would know?
I don't even know who they are. You and I went to Midwestern Baptist College. It might have happened while we were there. I doubt it. You know, my dad taught there for years.
Right.
So it might have happened back when I was in 5th grade. So I don't really know. But when he told me that story, and I just couldn't forget it. And I've always been real careful about making deals and trading with people because I never want to come off like I'm taking advantage of them, because I found out God has a way of kicking his children in the seat of the pants.
Or taking care of them when they're being victimized.
Yeah, absolutely. That's right. And
he has a way of leveling the playing field.
I like that, Jim. That's a good way to put that, leveling the playing field. That's about right. So, but that was a great story. And you know, going to Midwestern Baptist College, I'll say that we had a lot of good people there. We've made lifelong friends, but we had a couple of scoundrels there too.
This is true.
But that goes without saying that could be anybody anywhere. So that's true. I mean, sometimes in hindsight, you look back on personal experiences like that, and you're like, is it? Yeah. I've found it. Historically, I've been the first person to pick on the Baptists because I am one. Right.
You know, I can do that without any malice. And if we're not going to take issue with our own, then we really don't have a right to complain. You know, to criticize anybody else if we're not going to take care of our own issues. And so I did that for years and years and years. I would do that and be the first one to criticize the circles that I ran in for what was just criticisms. What I ended up finding out is that everybody everywhere, no matter what circle you bump into, there's a lot of people everywhere that are just scoundrels. And that the sincerity and a loyalty to truth and a genuine compassion for other people, that doesn't come with a particular line group. It comes on the basis of individuals making that choice to embrace God's truth and remembering that somewhere in the process of all of this, that love is a truth that is taught in Scripture. Mm-hmm. In the circles that we ran in, I know I'm kind of chasing a rabbit here, but in the circles that we ran in, it was, well, bless God, I'm telling the truth, and if I'm not offending people, then I don't know that I'm doing God's work. Well, just remember that loving people was also a truth taught in Scripture. But it's an individual choice, and it's available to anybody, regardless of what group you're in.
Now, I will say
and
this.
That's really just my point in saying that.
I'll say this on the other hand. I'm tired of preachers in this day and age saying, well, you got to be careful because Jesus didn't offend anybody.
That's not true either.
Yeah, right. I the first thing I think of is, oh, really? What about the money changers in the temple? You don't think they were offended as they were being chased with a cat of nine tails? Which is interesting, too, because the Bible says that he went in and he saw these money changers and he went back outside and he made a scourge of reeds. Which means I could just see Jesus sitting there with a sulky look on his face, carving away and tying these things together. He didn't. Yep. It says he went out there and made it. It didn't say he went out there and found one and picked it up. So while I imagine it took him at least 10, 15 minutes to make it at the. So he had to have been thinking about what he was fixing to do.
There was a level of premeditation, plain and simple.
And you know what? You go into a church to this day where they're selling whatever, cookies or whatever. Now there's a place and a time for that. But you had a church that's running as a business, and if you were to go in there premeditated and beat the pastor and the sellers around, that would be considered first-degree assault, and it would also, in the circles that we run in, be considered a sin.
Yeah.
But Jesus did that. So
it's interesting that passage that you're citing, you probably have already remembered this, that there's a prophecy that's linked up to that. Mm-hmm. And I forget where the prophecy was found, but I remember the verbiage. It was the prophecy of the Messiah was that he would make the statement that the zeal of thine house hath eaten me up.
Right.
You know, that when he came in, he wasn't milquetoast about that. He was throwing over tables. He was grabbing people by the nape of the neck, and he was chasing them out of there. They couldn't get away from him fast enough.
I would have loved to have been a fly on the wall.
You
now,
and me both.
My point of this is not that we are to, be like Christ in this way. Not we're to be like Christ in every way, but we don't want to go out and do that, it's almost the realm of the thinking of the Westboro Baptist, that we're going to go out and do this because, we don't want to do that. However, my point to this is that sin is not always what we think it is. Because if Jesus today, and if somebody did that today, we would consider that first degree assault, like I said, and a sin. But sin is not always what we, because if Jesus was perfect, he was no sin. He knew no sin. So what he did was not sinful. So sin is not always what we think it is. And I've learned that growing up, that a lot of things that are being taught in this world today as being wrong and sinful, a lot of it is, but sometimes we got to take a step back and look at it and go, wait a minute, let's see what the Scripture actually says about this.
Absolutely. So, and there's the thing. There's a balance to be had, and the balance is not like some academic. It's not an academic fixture. It is sincerity in trying to take God's word and apply it to our lives, because you can make love a sin,
sure,
if it represents cowardice and caving in on compromise in matters of truth. But by the same token, like the other folks that we had talked about, if they take it to the, well, bless God, if I'm not offending people, I don't know that I'm doing the Lord's work. Well, either one of these, if you're taking this to the either being lazy or accommodating your particular cocktail of sin,
right?
So that you don't have to come in and try to engage this with God's truth and God's love to do the highest good according to a Spirit-led wisdom and the Word of God. If you're going to be lazy on that, well, then that is sinful.
Right, yep. But I tell you what, I would have loved to have been a fly on the wall that day in the temple.
Yep.
Because here was Christ who gave us the greatest commandment, to love one another as we love ourselves. And here's an example of, here's another way to look at it. While he was beating them across the back with that scourge, chasing them around, he was still loving them.
Well, you're right, because here's the thing: a scourge of reeds. We're not talking about something that even has a force continuum. You're going to be hard pressed. You're not killing anybody with that, but it's far from being able to say that this was somehow going to be a pleasant thing for them.
He was getting their attention.
Well, if you've ever been chased by your mama with a Hot Wheels track, you know she ain't going to kill you with that thing, but you don't want to be anywhere near her.
And you think she won't, but you kind of think she will at the same time. Yeah,
right. She knows how to put the fear of mama into you. She either got a wooden spoon or one of them little flippers off her feet, or
that flippers off your feet. That makes for a good topic. Let's segue into that. What were some of the things as a child you got spanked with?
Right.
You've already mentioned the Hot Wheels track. I don't think I ever had that one. Maybe.
Yeah, there's a Hot Wheels track. And now, usually when I did get it, it was a little bit more premeditated.
Okay.
And what I ended up getting a lot of times is I got the belt.
Yeah, the belt. That's what of course, that's the classic, And I feel sorry for kids whose fathers were barbers, because they had that razor strap,
Oh, my dad told the stories about the razor strap.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, and my dad was a cutter grinder for a lot of years and sharp. He was kind of known in local circles for sharpening his own knives. So when he took that belt off, and that belt was 2 inches across, that was the same belt that he'd used to strop his knives.
Yeah, the belt that they wore, well, you could hear it coming through the belt loops. You knew you were in trouble. Yes.
You started screaming before it hit the last loop. Let me out of here.
Yep. I remember, I think a couple of times. Oh, yeah. You remember the paddle with the rubber band and the ball on the end of it?
Yep.
Yeah, once that, it only took about 10 minutes once you had one of those for the rubber band to break and the ball go flying.
Right.
And once you didn't throw that away, Mama took it. That was a new tool. So that was a new tool.
Now, the funny thing that was said amongst my cousins was, well, I shouldn't say names, but I know amongst my cousins, they talk about Mama getting a hold of the old ping pong paddle.
Yeah, that was another tool, and we
that had
a
way of grabbing you on impact.
Yep,
that impact wasn't going anywhere but straight into your hide.
And you know why? Because it had that little rubber mat on it that had the
grippy.
The grippy, and boy, it gripped too. Let me tell you. Yes.
Ooh.
So, and then there
change your religion.
Yes. Then there was occasional. You've already mentioned the slipper or the shoe,
right.
And then there's the classic wooden spoon.
Right.
Now, it didn't happen in my family, but I've heard stories of, mamas going and telling her kids to go out and cut them a switch off the tree. I remember hearing stories about that when I was a kid, but I never had that happen to me. Did you?
Nope. No, I had cousins that had happened to, but that leather belt was always so close.
Yeah,
didn't need to be sent out for no switches.
Well, I was kind of surprised that never did happen to us because we had a weeping willow tree.
Oh,
and those things are like if you hit those fast enough, or they hit you fast enough, it's almost like a razor blade sensation.
Cuts you to the soul.
Yep. So, well, that was a good topic. So, oh yeah. So,
change your religion in a heartbeat.
I remember one time I got in trouble because I did something to my sister, and I was so grateful because my dad decided they were going to let my sister spank, my younger sister. And I thought, well, okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to act like this really, really hurts, because if they decide it doesn't, then they'll change their mind and they'll spank me anyway after I get that one. And not only that, if I act like it really hurts, they might let her do it again. And I knew, the next time I get in trouble, I knew good and well she didn't have the strength to swat a fly. So,
oh goodness.
So that worked out well that time. that worked out well that time, but it never went that way again. They never told her to spank me again. So, and I never got to spank her. Well, let me rephrase that. They never gave me permission to spank her. So there might have been a time or two, but anyway, that's old. That's history. That's water under the bridge. So
the ones that I got, I ended up getting spanked Christian school.
Oh yeah, they're famous for that.
Oh yeah.
What did you get swats for in school?
Well, see, that's the funny thing is
you don't have to be.
I've got no motivation to lie about this. I'm going to be 50 years old this month.
Right.
But the thing is they had a zero policy on fighting. Well, I was the one that was getting beat up, and by the time they got around to asking me what had happened,
they'd already whipped you.
I was so distraught, I couldn't I didn't know how the thing started. But I hit a certain point where they caught this kid. I remember his name, but I'm going to say it on the air. He's sitting on my chest, slapping me in the face. Got my arms pinned down on my sides, and he's slapping my face going. And I'd gotten to a point where I'm like, you know what? I am getting aggravated by this, but I'm going to take some control. And I says, number one, you can't hurt me enough to make me take a spanking again. And number two, I'm just not giving you that kind of control. And I says, you can't make me fight back. Well, in the exchange that represented, they ended up finding the kid sitting on my chest with my arms pinned under his legs. And finally, the superintendent of the school calls me and says, what are you, raising some kind of a wimp? And my mom's like, what are you talking about, a wimp? And he tells her, sir, and she says, it's your paddle he's scared of.
Yeah.
It's like, this isn't about me. He's been taking abuse from these kids and you can't seem to get a handle on any of it. What are we paying you for? And finally, Mr. Nash got it in his head what had been happening. At this point, 4 years.
Right.
4 years. And multiple times a week I was taken. Finally, he says, now that I understand that this is what's going on, you tell Jim that I would not spank him as hard many times now that I understand what's going on.
As hard or as many times? Wow.
Well, what he didn't want to give me a sense that I had a blank check.
Gotcha.
However,
understand
what ended up happening next ended up telling the tale a little bit better because he really took ownership of it. He didn't want me to feel comfortable to have a blank check, but one of the same kids had been giving me a hard time ended up coming after me, and I'm like,
yeah.
And I ended up catching him in a set of circumstances. I didn't start it, but I finished it, and I wore a black eye for 2 weeks and tried to come back around and say, I'm telling my mama, I'm telling my dad, you're going to get a spanking. And I'm like, you say a word about this, I'm going to give you a matched set.
Right.
I says, I've been taking a spanking over you guys beating up on me. I says, and now you're going to whine about it? No,
Right.
you're not. And long story short, I didn't get spanked for that one.
Well.
At all.
Uh-huh.
And Mr. Nash is like, I understand.
Yeah.
Let's not make a habit of this. But he told me he wouldn't spank me as hard or as many times, but the man really did understand what had been going on for 4 years, that they kind of needed to learn some respect, and it needed to come from someplace other than a third-party paddle. But sometimes that third-party paddle, those teachers, they were the ones that were out of control.
You know, I'll say this. Sometimes, you know, I got 2 paddlings the whole time I was in Christian school, from kindergarten to 12th grade. The last time I got spanked, it was for an accumulation of demerits, which you're familiar with that system. We had that at Midwestern Baptist College,
Yep.
although they didn't spank us. Sometimes we wish they would have, but they didn't. But the last time I was paddled was for an accumulation of demerits. I didn't turn in so many pieces of homework, and I think it was like 15 demerits in 1 week. You got 3 swats with the paddle. And I remember being marched down. The principal would go around from class to class calling, okay, so-and-so, you come with me. Then he'd go to the next classroom, and there'd be a line of people following him back to his office. You'd stand outside of his door, and he'd call you in one at a time, and he would tell you to bend over, put your hands on your knees. Three swats, and he'd send you back to your classroom and tell you to bring the next one in. So that was that. But the first time I ever got swats, I did not understand what was going on because I was in kindergarten. And what I got, this is totally wrong. But I'm not going to, I want to make a disclaimer here. Christian schools are some of the best education our Christian kids can get into. So I don't want to make this come off and sound like they're all abusers. We got a good education. We got a good upbringing. Sometimes there's things that happen that we didn't understand, and we still don't. Sometimes things happen. It's not a perfect world that aren't right. Things that'll happen that it just isn't right. And the first time I got swatted or spanked was in kindergarten, and they were trying to teach us the alphabet. Not just the alphabet, but the sounds of each letter. Like A is for A, as in apple. B is for B, as in boy. And I was having problems memorizing the patterns that they had and understanding how this... I was in kindergarten. This was my first 6 months in school at all. And they sent me down to the principal's office to to administer a swatting. And I got the swat, and I was in tears. I had no idea what was going on or why this was happening. And honestly, looking back on it, for that to happen to a kindergarten child, that's wrong.
Yep.
That is totally wrong. And I'll say this, that's how I remember it. That may not be exactly how it was, because kindergarten was a whole long time ago for me. But that's how I remember it. And it shook me up, and that's something that I never forgot. So, like I said, it's not a perfect world. That I'll say this, that Christian school was in Festus, Missouri, and I attended there.
It's infested with what?
No, it's in Festus, Missouri. I don't know what it was infested with, but
it was infested with misery.
Yeah. No, I enjoyed going there. It was my first school experience. That was before I was even homeschooled. Now, if you want to count the spankings I got in homeschool, well, there's too many to remember. So, but that's for a whole different reason.
And those ones are a little bit more difficult to...
At that age, I was not the best child, and spankings were... It wasn't a matter of when you were, or if you were going to get one. It was a matter of when, So that was a fun... Were you ever homeschooled?
No.
No? Did you have friends at church that were?
Nope. That homeschooling ended up coming like way after my time.
Okay. Well, I was...
Yeah.
The first time I was homeschooled, I think I was in either first or third grade. I think it was in first, because I remember after going to kindergarten, my mom taught us at home, and I remember going to second grade at Ed V. Williams School in Springfield, Missouri, and then third grade... I was homeschooled. Fourth grade, I went to Elms Road Elementary in Swartz Creek, Michigan. And then fifth grade through 12th grade, I attended Genesee Christian High School, which is where I graduated from. And, of course, you know the rest of the story. You and I I started to say locked horns, but that's not the right expression. I don't think we ever locked horns in college, Jim.
No, I don't remember us ever having a problem.
Cumulatively, we both wanted to lock horns with a few other folks. Oh, the stories we could tell and the books we could write.
The stories we're eventually going to tell. Stay tuned.
Probably, that's right.
I want some people nervous.
Yeah. Hey, moving right along. You remember a week or so ago I mentioned those little sweet potato pies that we had gotten?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I got the packaging and I looked at. You can buy them online. They're really good. They're small. So if you're on a diet, you got a little bit of a sweet tooth, but you're not supposed to have all that much sugar or carbs, check out the little sweet potato pies they have at hailmary.com. That's HAILMERRY.com. And I'll try to remember to post that on the website as well. But they're really good, and I thought some of the listeners out there might enjoy checking them out. And Jim?
I have one. Okay, if I myself?
Absolutely. That's what I was going to do. No.
Give me 2 seconds to bring it up.
Well, I'll go ahead and quote myself real quick while you're bringing it up. I love to be quoted, even if it's just by myself, Jason Kurtman. So that's it. Yeah, deep, isn't it? That'll make you think.
Yeah.
No worries. So I'll give you another one while you're pulling it up. General Patton once said, "Accept the challenges so that you can feel the exhilaration of victory." I like that one.
Yeah.
And he also said, and I like this one, "If you tell people where to go but not how to get there, you'll be amazed at the results." And here's one, we mentioned Ronald Reagan a couple of weeks ago. "I've often said there's nothing better for the inside of a man than the outside of a horse." And a lot of people, that could go different with any pets, I guess. Or a rubber chicken. Maybe a rubber chicken makes you feel better. I don't know.
Well, here's the first.
Okay.
Let me see if this. Crescente pach par parcipitationem felixis pulos.
Okay.
Which is Latin for increasing world peace through the sharing of chicken.
I like it. That's good. I like that.
The one that I was actually looking for, though, is this. If we are specks in an indifferent universe, then you have neither meaning nor value. But if there's a God.
Right, yeah. Here's one you remember Billy Sunday?
Yeah.
Billy Sunday was a famous football player back at the turn of the last century. He quit baseball to become an evangelist. And he made a very interesting quote that was kind of prophetic and kind of wrong at the same time. His quote is, "The rivers of America will run with blood filled to their banks before we will submit to them taking the Bible out of our schools." That's happened.
You're right. It was kind of prophetic, and it was kind of wrong. It tells you where his mind was at, and God bless him for it. But what we have is that the rivers are running red, and it's because the Bible has been taken out of the public school system in 62 and 63.
Running red with the blood of the unborn.
To head the list, yes.
Yeah, to head the list. That's right. So, but here's another one by George Washington. "Be courteous to all, but intimate with few, and let those few be well tried before you give them your confidence." And Jim, I'm proud to say you're one of those few with me. So, yep. Oh, here's one that's really interesting. This will be my last one. Do you remember who Marvin Gaye was?
Yeah.
Yeah, because you're from the Motown area. Do you remember how he was killed?
I do.
He got in an argument with his father, and his father shot him.
Oh.
Yeah, sometime before that happened, he had this to say: "If I do my job well, then God will smile on my offspring and on their offspring. I'm sure my father is seeing a blessing in me." Think about that for a minute. Yeah, so he might have for a little bit, but I don't know. Didn't seem to turn out that way. So let's see, Jim. Let me ask you a question. Did you have any favorite restaurants when you were a kid that they're no longer open?
I did actually. Over in Troy, there along 19 Mile and 19 Mile in Rochester. There was a Chinese restaurant, Red Dragon.
Mm-hmm.
And it was actually the place where I had first gotten introduced to Chinese food. And now it's become the measure that I judge all Chinese food by. But it was, for people that aren't into Chinese food, there's actually different styles of Chinese food. And there's a style of Chinese food that was actually adapted for America that's called New York style Chinese food.
Really?
Yep. And Red Dragon had the best sweet and sour chicken. It was that really rich gold sauce, and then they were one of the ones that started giving you the Hawaiian yeast rolls, the big sweet yeast roll. Yeah, and so between that and their egg roll, everything that they had was just phenomenal. And now it's like every once in a while I'll catch a little scent, a little taste, a little whiffage of one of those elements of the Red Dragon Chinese food. And I'm like, oh, that's the stuff there. That's what. But yeah, the Red Dragon was one.
Do you remember Burger Chef?
Burger Chef. I remember Burger Chef.
I'll let you in on a little secret. My mother-in-law, your adopted mother-in-law, or no, your adopted mother. Anyway, she used to work at Burger Chef.
Oh.
Yeah, so I didn't know that.
Another one.
Until recently.
Do you remember the Red Barn?
I have heard of it, but I don't think I ever ate there.
Out near the Pontiac Mall was our stomping grounds back in college. There used to be a place right there by the Pontiac Mall that was called the Red Barn, and I didn't know it at the time, but I guess it was a nationally syndicated or nationally it was a nationwide restaurant, and it was like almost like the Chick-fil-A of its day.
Okay.
But went there one time, and my sister bit down into a chicken sandwich, and it had a piece of lead shot.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, don't know what to do with that, but there it is.
I've had that happen before with rabbit, but not from a restaurant.
Yeah, it's kind of a little odd. Makes you wonder, how are you killing these chickens? I wasn't aware that was an efficient way to kill chickens for a restaurant.
Yeah, that doesn't make sense. Okay, huh. Well, yeah, Howard Johnson, they're not even around anymore, are they?
I don't think so.
I don't think they are. So, I did eat at a restaurant here recently that I liked. I might have mentioned this already. I ate a yak burger. Yes, at the Mine Shaft restaurant in Madrid, New Mexico. That's where they filmed that show Longmire. That was the place where they filmed the scenes involving the red pony. Our waitress was actually a extra. She was one of the waitresses in that. It was pretty interesting. It's a good, it's a modern Western. Jim, what do you carry? What's your everyday carry consist of? Don't you like how I can switch gears real fast?
Yeah. Well, of course, you got your wallet, you got your cell phone, and I got like an Android J3, so nothing, Samsung J3. But of course, I have my keys on one of these brass
carabiner
snap rings.
Okay.
Yeah. Actually, I get mine right out of the hardware.
Right. Do you carry any of this stuff attached to your belt, or is it in your pockets, or a mixture?
I don't carry a lot of stuff in my pockets. The only other thing that I'll have is I've got a Columbia River Knife and Tool Company blade that I'll carry, 4-inch blade, Crawford Casper that I'll carry in my one. And other than that, I don't put a lot of things in my pockets. You might catch me with a little bit of leftover chain or something.
Sure.
But that's really about it.
Do you find that sometimes when you're carrying a lot with you that your pants tend to slide south? You kind of cinch that belt up a little bit? Only if
I've forgotten my belt.
Oh, okay. Well, when you're built like a funnel, like me, I got that from a preacher at Midwestern. I asked him why he never wore a belt. His response was, "Hey, you ever try to put a belt on a funnel?" You might know who I'm talking about. I don't know. But anyway, I have discovered, and I actually discovered this when I carried a pistol every day. It was part of my profession. There are these things called Perry suspenders. They're made by Dickies, and they go great on a belt. They are suspenders, but instead of the little metallic clips that clamp down on your pants, they have these clips that slide up under your belt, and they hold your belt up. And if you're carrying a gun or a knife or something that weights down your pants, or maybe even you're not carrying anything at all except that little spare tire under your skin, these Perry suspenders are great. I've had a pair for a long time. Sarah bought me 2 extra pairs. The pair I had before was black. She got me a royal blue one or a navy blue one and a tan one. I absolutely love these things. They're fantastic. So I just give those a plug real quick. I really enjoy wearing those. They seem to help me. And they kind of support my back a little bit too. So nice. That's good for me. So for my everyday carry, usually a pocket knife. Which one? I have a whole slew of them to choose from. And some of them I don't like. I bought a knife. I saw an ad on the internet. Said, world's fastest pocket knife, spring assisted. And it's totally free. We're giving it away. You just pay shipping and handling. And the shipping charge was $10. And I thought, well, why not? So I ordered it, got it here. And it was a nice looking knife, had a nice sharp blade. The problem was it was so fast that when you opened it up, it would bypass the locking mechanism and it wouldn't unlock to where you could close it. You had to take a little screwdriver and push that little lever down before you could close it up. For those of you who carry spring-loaded knives, you kind of know what I'm talking about, I'm sure. And I don't use that. I don't carry it or anything. I keep it at my desk. If I need a letter opener or something, I'll gently open it up and use that. But you got to be careful about that free stuff you get online.
Yeah, that's true enough, especially if you do plan on having it be there, God forbid, defensive purposes.
Right.
What I kind of lucked out with is when I first bought. At first, years back, I carried a Benchmade AFC, what was it? AFCK, which stood for Advanced Folding Combat.
Okay.
Which actually was a lot less intimidating than what it sounds like, but it was a solid knife, and somebody had given it to me. Otherwise, I wouldn't have had the money to carry something that expensive. Benchmade makes good stuff, but it also tends to be kind of on the pricey side. But then Columbia River Knife and Tool Company. They started coming out with some stuff, and they tended to keep their prices pretty reasonable, but the quality of their products was really, really good. Now their prices have kind of come up, but Mr. Crawford and Mr. Casper were custom knife makers.
Mm-hmm.
And they, as is sometimes the case, knife companies like Columbia will get a license from some of these custom guys to be able to mass produce some of these knives. And about that time, they came out with Crawford Casper, and it was only like $50 at the time. And I grabbed one of those. I love that knife. I carried that thing 12 years, and I made one alteration to it on the belt clip so that I could carry it in a way that I'd reach in with my thumb into my pocket and be able to kind of cinch it down like you pinching somebody.
Right.
And I'd give that a flick, and the blade would come out, and it would already be in a reverse grip if, God forbid, I needed. The funny thing was the price started to go up on them, and then they stopped making them all together, and then you could find them for anywhere between $20 and $25, and then they all disappeared.
Huh.
But if you ever have a chance to check the knife out and you can get one, I tell you what, when I had the chance to get another one, I bought 2 of them.
Yeah.
Because that first one I had lasted for 12 years. And
do you remember that?
Go ahead.
Do you remember that time at college? Don't ask me what I was doing in the dumpster. I don't remember. But I found in the dumpster a Vietnam era K-bar.
Was that in the dumpster? I thought that was in the.
It was in the dumpster.
I know that you were working in the print shop.
Yeah, I was taking some trash out from the print shop, and I think what it was, I was throwing this trash away in the dumpster, and I looked down and saw it in the bottom of the dumpster. I think that's how I came across it. So, but yeah, it was in the dumpster.
Do you remember how long that was?
Oh, it was a combat size. I think overall length was about a foot. The overall length.
Okay. For some reason, I remember that.
Remember.
But for some reason, I'm thinking that you didn't have the regular one, that you had the quartermaster's version of that.
It may have been. I can tell you it had the hard plastic sheath, and it had the real thick canvas belt looping. I do remember that. And I wish I still had that, but I remember what happened to it. I had it under the floorboard of an old Chevette. That's the 1980s disposable Chevette. The car that
right.
Chevrolet came out with. That was an amazing. Well, we could do a whole show on the Chevette. Yeah, on the Chevette. So, but anyway, I had that in the floorboard, and I ended up selling that car, and I forgot that it was there, and I lost it. But that was an interesting.
There was a cool knife I had when I was about 15 years old. Of course, I probably could have gotten arrested just for carrying. It was I'm trying to remember. They called it an Explorer boot knife. The blade, it was double-edged, but the blade was only like 3 inches long. And you could pick it up for, I think, like $30, $35.
Huh.
And it was a cool little knife, but in retrospect, the blade material wasn't that high a quality. It was like a 440 stainless, but everything back then was. But it was cool, and it was well made, other than being 440 stainless. It had these ebony handles on it and little nickel rivets. And I liked that well enough, but of course, by the time I ended up finding one on eBay, there was one that was just beat to pieces that they wanted going on $80, $90 for, and I said, forget that. So, of course, I took up and decided I'm going to make my own, but only if I'm going to, because I like the design, the geometry on it was just really, really cool. But I figured if I'm going to do this, then I'm going to use some decent materials. So I got an old horseshoe rasp. Of course, now you're dealing with high carbon steel,
right?
And I softened that thing up and shaped it, and it's actually still in process, but I'm trying to decide whether I'm going to do something with a handle on it, or whether I'm going to leave the rasps from the file on there. But I'm kind of pleased with where it's at. So
okay, well,
I'll have to send you. A picture.
Yeah, let
later.
me know what you're going to do with that. I am curious. It is about time to wrap up the show. I will say this, Jim. One other topic, real quick. Last week I got a phone call, and I've heard these were going around, and the message actually said, when I answered the call, I got a recording, it says, "This is the Social Security Administration. Your Social Security number has been compromised. Please call," and the number they gave was 844-850-3389. Now, I'm told they're using a lot of these numbers. They're basically, once you call them back, and a lot of people are, especially older people and some other people who may just be, and I mean this in the nicest sense of the word, ignorant as to what's happening here. They're saying, yeah, we believe your Social Security number has been compromised. Can you please, for confirmation purposes, provide us with your Social Security number? Well, of course they do, and that's at the point where it's been compromised, obviously.
Right.
But be careful about phone calls you get like that. We've talked about that, and especially somebody saying if you owe taxes, and if you don't make a payment right then over the phone, they're going to come and arrest you. The police are on their way. That's what they told me. And usually they want you to pay with some sort of iTunes gift card. Now, that's ridiculous. No, the IRS isn't going to call you like that, even if they did, or even if they sent you a letter. Not an email, but a letter, a certified letter. They're not going to ask for an iTunes gift card for payment. So be careful about that. I know that there's a lot of folks out there. Folks, even those of you who take care of elderly parents, please inform them to not take any calls like this, or if they get anything, hang up, report it to somebody so that they can investigate it. We got to take care of our families.
Another one like that is ransomware. Well, you'll get...
Yes, that's
some insidious stuff. They'll get you on the phone and drag you through it. And okay, well, we can fix this for you, but it's going to cost you blah blah blah.
You know, when
I nearly got taken advantage of.
I'll tell you what, the best thing to do, if you get a pop-up that says click here to download the software to fix this problem, this is what you do. You turn your computer off. A cold shut off. Hold that power down button and restart it. Now, I know you're not supposed to turn off your computer that way, but to avoid a virus like that, I found that's the best way.
Yep.
Restart your computer. If your browser opens up and it says your computer did not shut down properly, do you want to restore the last opened windows? Click no, because if you do, you're right back where you started. So,
yep.
Anyway, this has been the Biscuits and Gravy Show. I'm Jason Kurtman.
Please leave your Amber Alerts on your phone. The life you save may be someone that you know and care about.
Good night, everybody.